for whatever reason, the government never did anything. I think they were thinking about it, or the president was distracted, or Congress was, and they were thinking about ways to revive the economy, but they never actually implemented anything. And because of the delay, the economy fixed all by itself. And so what started out to look as bad as the 1929 collapse was over in about a year, because the government didn't do anything. And in fact, the government actually did the opposite. They cut government spending. They did the opposite of what the Keynesians say you have to do, and instead of having a depression, we had an immediate recovery. Now, of course, it later became another boom because the Federal Reserve again kept interest rates too low for most of the 20s to try to prop up the British pound, which again is another subject for another lecture. But by the time we had the collapse in 1929, we had forgotten the mistakes of 1921. And Hoover, contrary to the current conventional wisdom, was Johnny on the spot with the stimulus. People think now that, oh, Hoover said liquidate everybody. No, he didn't. His Secretary of the Treasury said that, but he ignored his Secretary of the Treasury and did the opposite. He bailed out, he stimulated, he interfered, he did everything he could to prevent that recession and shorten it, which is why we had the Depression. And he got it started, and Roosevelt came in and finished the job. It's a 1-2 punch. If you want to look at today's situation, George Bush is Herbert Hoover, and Barack Obama, hopefully, is not going to end up being Roosevelt. Hopefully he's not here for 4, well, no, he can't be there for 4 terms. But hopefully he's only there for 1. But that is the situation. The intervention is started under Hoover, and then Roosevelt expanded it and made it worse. And that's exactly what Barack Obama is doing with the interventionist policies of Hoover. But if you talk to these liberal politicians today, and you say, do nothing, let it happen, the first thing they say is, oh, you want to repeat the mistakes of Hoover? You want to create another depression? It's all revisionist history. They have no clue why there was a Great Depression. I mean, Ben Bernanke is a student of the Great Depression. Now, if he was my student, I'd have given him an F. He didn't learn anything about the Great Depression. And that's why we're going to have a worse one this time around with him at the helm. Yeah.
I'm doomed is really not a good soundbite to get elected.
Well, I'm not.
The country's doomed is not.
Well, my soundbite is we're doomed unless you elect me. See, there's hope if we do the right thing. But without me, the chances of doing the right thing are very remote. So yes, we are doomed unless we do something. Now, I am still optimistic that the free market can work. Countries, look at Japan, look at Germany. We decimated them at the end of the Second World War. We bombed out their whole country, and they came back. We can come back. Right? The damage that the government has done to us is big, but we're not mortally wounded. We can come back, but we're never going to come back with government standing in our way and exacerbating our problems. So I'm trying to present an image that, yes, there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's just a long tunnel, but there is light there. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. It's like, I'm advocating that we rip off the Band-Aid and just, yeah, it hurts a little bit, but we rip it off and get it out of the way. Everybody else wants to peel it off slowly. I don't want to do that. And so hopefully voters will understand that. But we don't know. I mean, maybe I can try again in 2012 and it doesn't work in 2010, but I don't know how much time we have. This is, it's like a ticking bomb.
They actually want to put on more Band-Aids.
Well, yeah, that's what they want. They don't want to treat the illness. They just want to cover it up. But the thing is, it's a cancer, and if we don't address that cancer now, the whole body of the economy is going to die. It doesn't do any good to put Band-Aids on it and pretend it's not there, or liquor us up so we don't feel it.
I think a lot of things you said sounds logic, but I need time to digest to see if because everyone who run for public office tended to promise a lot and thinking they're right. Everyone says that. This is exactly the same thing.
Oh, exactly. But I'm not a politician. See, all the other people running for public office, they're politicians. That's why they say things like that. See, that's not me.
Okay. Another thing, basically, because you seem to always claim that you correctly predicted the housing market crash. So do you think that before the next problem of the currency crisis, the stock market is going to be going down?
I mean, it could. I mean, it's going down now, but it doesn't really matter stock market going up or down in dollar terms. If they create enough money, the stock market's going to go up. But it doesn't mean there's any value there. I mean, the best performing stock market in the world is in Zimbabwe. But, you know, nobody is benefiting owning those shares. But, you know, back to your initial question, I think people can be confident that that's not going to be me. I mean, I know personally, as an individual, I'm better off losing. Okay? But as an American, I think I'm better off winning. And so I'm trying to win this race because I think I can do something good. But it's not because I think it's the best thing for me personally. And I think personally, my life is better if I stay as a private citizen. I have a lot less to do, it's a lot less stressful, especially considering the job. See, a lot of politicians, they don't have a lot of stress. I'm gonna be under insurmountable stress. I'm like going into the lion's den, right? I'm going into a chamber where 99 people probably want to kill me, right? And so it isn't going to be easy, but I'm willing to do it because the stakes are very high. And I think if I can succeed, it's worth it. So as I said, I'm not doing this to go to Washington and sell out. There is no way that I would do that. And hopefully people will see that. You know, I'm the only one that's running who's better off losing, and I'm still trying to win.
So, forget about the large financial crisis. In terms of personal business, where would be the best place to park our savings?
You know, what I do with my clients, I have a brokerage firm, Euro Pacific Capital, and we have a basket. I have a long-term investment strategy which understands the dollar is going to lose value, that the U.S. standard of living is going to decline relative to standards of living in other countries, that U.S. assets are going to lose value. I think in the last decade, the U.S. share of world GDP collapsed by close to 50%. There was an unprecedented decline in our relative wealth and sphere of influence. And I think this decade can be even worse. So I want to make sure that I have my money and my clients' money invested in places where it will grow, not shrink. So we have foreign stocks. I have an overweighting in Asian economies, natural resources, underweighting, let's say, in Europe or Latin America. We recommend physical precious metals, commodities, foreign currencies, foreign government bonds, corporate bonds. Just a general diversified long-term portfolio, and I'm focusing on the end game. Nobody knows for sure. I mean, we had a little hedge fund, and some of my clients made a lot of money shorting subprime mortgages, and that was a shot that worked. But in general, I'm trying to position everybody to win the game at the very end. And I don't know exactly the path that we're going to take to arrive at that destination. I just know that that's where we're headed. And I want to do my best as a senator to make sure that we don't get there, or at least if we do get there, we do it with as least damage possible. But I'm going to plan. Even though I might hope for the best, I'm not naive enough to invest based on that scenario, because the more likely scenario, the more probable scenario is very, very ugly for the dollar and U.S. assets. So I'm going to guard against that, and I'm not going to worry about the noise between now and then, because it's just noise.
Seems like a lot of the things you say are very data-driven. How do you address Republicans who have not been data-driven in the sense that they think that an approach to tackling some of the issues associated with global warming is just, their take on it is that that's not good for business, therefore it must not be a problem. I'm not saying that there's not controversy in how much of a problem that is, but how would you address that?
Well, look,
before the horse that way.
Global warming, obviously, there's science on both sides of that argument that A, is the world warming, yes or no, and B, is it warming because of man or because of nature, and C, is it going to be harmful? So there's a lot of unknowns with respect to global warming. The problem is there is a much greater disaster looming that is man-made, and I know it's coming for sure. So rather than focusing on a gigantic problem that may or may not exist, I want to focus on this one problem that is relevant right now, that it exists for sure, that I know is being created by man, and I know we can do something about it. So that's where I want to focus my effort. I think all the rest of the stuff is a distraction. It's like, you're on the Titanic, and you're arguing about the color of the drapes, or which cabin you want to sit in. The ship is sinking. Get on the lifeboat or do something to plug up the